The sun hung low over the sleepy town of Meadowbrook, painting the sky in hues of gold and rose. The air was still, carrying only the faint scent of freshly baked bread from the bakery down the street. Amid the calm hum of the evening, a man named Thomas walked along the cobblestone path, his steps heavy and uncertain. His coat, worn and faded at the edges, flapped lightly in the breeze as he tucked his trembling hands into his pockets. Thomas had lived in Meadowbrook for years, long enough for people to know his name but not his story. To most, he was the quiet man who fixed broken furniture or mended fences for a few coins. But behind his weary smile and kind eyes, Thomas carried a loneliness that words could not quite capture. His wife, Clara, had passed away 3 winters ago, leaving a void that no amount of work or time could fill. Their small cottage, once filled with laughter and warmth, now felt like a hollow echo of what once was. Every day, he rose before dawn, took his tools, and worked until the last light faded. The money he earned barely covered his meals and the upkeep of the house. But Thomas didn't complain. He never had. He believed that kindness, no matter how small, was the one thing worth giving, even when life had taken everything else. One crisp autumn morning, as Thomas passed through the marketplace, he noticed a young girl sitting alone near a stall of wilted flowers. Her clothes were thin, her shoes torn, and her small hands were clasped around a basket that looked far too empty for a day's effort. Her name, as he would later learn, was Lily. She was no older than 10, with a face streaked from tears she tried to hide and eyes that had seen far too much of life's harshness. He stopped beside her, his gentle voice breaking through her silence. "Tough day, little one?" She startled slightly but nodded, wiping her cheek quickly. "People don't want old flowers," she murmured. "Mama said if I sell these, we can have bread tonight. But no one wants them now." Thomas knelt down beside her, looking at the flowers, petals drooping, colors fading, but still beautiful in their own fragile way. He reached into his pocket and took out a few coins, the last he had until his next job. "I'll take them," he said softly. Her eyes widened. "But they're not good anymore." He smiled faintly. "They're good enough for me." She hesitated, then handed him the basket, her small fingers brushing against his rough hand. He placed the coins in her palm, closing her fingers around them gently. "Go get your bread, Lily." She looked up at him, confusion flickering into gratitude. "Thank you, sir." Thomas simply nodded and continued on his way, carrying the basket of dying flowers as though they were the rarest treasures. When he reached home, he placed them in a jar of water and set them by the window. Somehow, the house didn't feel quite as empty that evening. Days turned into weeks, and Thomas saw Lily again, always in the same spot, sometimes with flowers, sometimes with trinkets she and her mother made. Each time, he stopped to talk to her, sometimes buying something small, sometimes just sharing a few kind words. Slowly, she began to open up to him. Her father had left when she was a baby, and her mother worked at a laundry shop, struggling to make ends meet. Thomas found himself looking forward to those brief meetings more than he cared to admit. They reminded him of the warmth he'd once known, of the simple joy of caring for someone else. One bitterly cold morning, snow began to fall early in the season. The marketplace was nearly empty, the stalls shuddered against the wind. As Thomas made his way through, he spotted Lily huddled near a wall, her thin coat no match for the biting cold. He hurried over, kneeling beside her. "Lily, what are you doing out here? It's freezing." She shivered, her lips pale. "Mama's sick," she whispered. "I was trying to sell these to buy her medicine." She held up a few hand-sewn cloth dolls, her small hands trembling. Thomas's chest tightened. Without hesitation, he took off his scarf and wrapped it around her shoulders. "You shouldn't be out here," he said gently. "Come on. Let's get you home." Her eyes widened. "But I can't leave the dolls. They'll be here tomorrow," he assured her. "You won't be if you stay out in this cold." Reluctantly, she nodded. Thomas led her through the snow-covered streets until they reached a narrow alleyway, where a small, run-down apartment stood. Inside, the air smelled faintly of damp wood and soap. Her mother lay on a cot in the corner, coughing weakly. The woman tried to sit up when she saw him. "Who are you?" she asked hoarsely. "Just a friend," Thomas said softly. "You need help. May I?" She nodded faintly, too weak to argue. Thomas left briefly, returning with medicine and some warm soup from the baker's shop. He stayed until the woman had eaten and her breathing steadied. Lily watched him the whole time, her eyes wide with something between wonder and disbelief. When he finally stood to leave, she tugged at his sleeve. "Why are you helping us?" He looked at her for a moment, then smiled gently. "Because once, someone helped me when I needed it most. And I never forgot." That night, as snow fell softly over Meadowbrook, Thomas walked home through the quiet streets, feeling a warmth he hadn't known in years. He realized that perhaps, in helping Lily and her mother, he had found a new purpose, a reason to keep giving, even when life gave him little in return. Over the following weeks, he visited often, fixing things around their home, bringing food when he could, and teaching Lily small crafts she could sell more easily. The three of them became an unlikely family, bound not by blood but by kindness freely given and gratefully received. But as winter deepened, Thomas began to cough, a dry, persistent sound that grew worse each day. He ignored it at first, telling himself it was just the cold air. But the truth was harsher. His lungs were failing, worn down by years of hard work and long nights in the chill. He didn't tell Lily or her mother. He couldn't bear the worry in their eyes. Instead, he continued to visit, even when his strength waned. On Christmas Eve, he brought them a small wooden box he had carved himself. Inside was a tiny carved bird, delicate and smooth, its wings outstretched as if ready to take flight. "For you, Lily," he said, placing it in her hands. "A reminder to always keep your spirit free." She held it close, smiling brightly. "It's beautiful, Mr. Thomas. Thank you." That night, as he walked home through the snow, the world seemed unusually quiet. Lights glowed in the windows, laughter drifted from nearby houses, and for the first time in years, Thomas felt at peace. He sat by the window, watching the flakes fall, the wilted flowers from months ago still standing faintly in their jar. He smiled faintly and closed his eyes. When Lily and her mother came to visit him the next morning, they found him sitting there, still and peaceful, his hands folded in his lap. The world had lost a good man that night, though few would ever know the depth of his kindness. For a long time, Lily cried, clutching the little wooden bird to her chest. But then she remembered his words, about kindness, about giving, about remembering those who had helped us. Years passed. Lily grew up, her mother's health restored, their lives slowly improving. She never forgot Thomas, the man who had bought her dying flowers, who had given when he had nothing, who had shown her that even the smallest acts of kindness could change a life. When she was old enough, she opened a small shop in Meadowbrook called A Gift Beyond Measure. The name came from something her mother had once said about Thomas: "The greatest gifts aren't the ones wrapped in paper, Lily. They're the ones that come from the heart." Inside the shop, Lily sold hand-carved trinkets and crafts, many inspired by the things Thomas had taught her. In the front window stood a small wooden bird with outstretched wings, perched on a plaque that read, "In memory of Thomas, who gave more than he ever had and taught us that kindness is the truest gift of all." People often came in just to look at the bird, drawn by the story of the man behind it. Over time, the tale of Thomas spread through Meadowbrook, the quiet carpenter who had changed lives not through wealth or grand gestures, but through simple, selfless love. Children grew up hearing his story. Strangers began leaving food at neighbors' doors, helping the elderly across the street, and offering warmth to those who needed it most. The town began to glow a little brighter, not because of lights or wealth, but because one man's kindness had sparked countless others. Lily would often stand at her shop window in the evenings, watching the people of Meadowbrook move through the golden light of dusk. And she would smile, whispering softly, "You did it, Mr. Thomas. You gave a gift beyond measure." And somewhere, perhaps in a place beyond the reach of time and sorrow, a gentle soul smiled back, knowing that the kindness he had sown in one small corner of the world had bloomed into something eternal.